Every season you spend more. Every weekend you work harder. And your garden still does not look the way you imagined it. No cohesion, no character, just disconnected plants in expensive containers that somehow never add up to anything. There are ideas that change everything without big budgets, without professionals, without starting over. Number 7 costs nothing and transforms the ugliest corner of any garden. Number 1 has been the secret of every great garden in history. Let's get into it. Counting down from 20. Number 20, paint your pots. This is the cheapest transformation in gardening, and almost nobody does it intentionally. A collection of mismatched terracotta pots reads as clutter. The same collection painted in 2 coordinating colors reads as a design display. Nothing else changed. The plants are the same. The arrangement is the same. The only difference is the color on the outside of the containers. French farmhouse gardens have used painted terracotta for centuries. Provençal, blue, ochre yellow, and soft white were applied to pots, walls, and borders to create visual coherence across even the most casually planted spaces. The coordination was the design, not the plants. Exterior chalk paint adheres to terracotta without primer. One small tin covers 8 to 10 standard pots. Pick 2 colors that appear somewhere in your existing planting. Apply them in any combination across your collection. The eye reads the repetition as intention. A garden that looks designed does not require expensive plants. It requires repeated color in unexpected places. Painted pots are the fastest way to create that repetition for almost nothing. This next one works even faster. Number 19. Gravel mulch. Most gardeners mulch with bark. That is not the cheapest option. It is not the longest lasting option, and it is not the most beautiful option. Gravel mulch applied at 5 centimeters depth suppresses weeds more effectively than bark, lasts indefinitely without replacing, and creates the clean mineral aesthetic that makes Mediterranean and Japanese garden styles so visually compelling. The plants emerge from a quiet, consistent ground surface that makes every leaf and flower read more clearly. Pea gravel, crushed granite, and decomposed granite are available in bulk bags at a fraction of the cost of the equivalent volume in premium bark mulch. One bulk bag covers more ground than most gardeners expect. Japanese temple gardens have used raked gravel as a primary design element for over 1,000 years. Not because it was cheap, because it was beautiful. The fact that it is also cheap is a benefit, not the reason. Lay cardboard beneath the gravel to suppress weeds before the gravel settles. One afternoon, one bag. The bed looks finished for years. This next one solves the problem that makes most gardens feel unresolved, no matter how much money is spent on them. Number 18, the single focal point. Most garden spaces fail for one reason. They have no focal point. A focal point is the thing your eye travels to first. Without one, the eye wanders and finds nowhere to rest. The garden reads as unresolved. Add one deliberate focal point, and the same space reads as designed, regardless of what surrounds it. The focal point does not need to be expensive. A single large pot, a weathered wooden chair painted one strong color, a bird bath from a salvage yard, a large stone, a single architectural plant like a phormium, or a fastigiate tree in a simple container. The object matters less than its placement and scale. Place it at the end of a sightline, at the junction of 2 paths, at the center of a bed viewed from the house, anywhere the eye naturally travels when looking at the space. English landscape garden designers in the 18th century built entire gardens around this principle. Every vista terminated in a focal point. Every path led somewhere worth arriving at. The principle costs nothing to apply. The object itself can cost almost nothing. The garden that looks unfinished is usually missing one thing. This is it. This next one is the reason professional designers charge thousands, and the reason you will never need to. Number 17, repetition planting. One of everything is a collection. 3 of the same things are gardens. This is the single most important planting principle that home gardeners consistently miss. Buying one of every plant that catches the eye at the garden center produces a busy, restless space where nothing connects. Buying 3 or 5 of the same plant and placing them at intervals through the border creates rhythm. The eye moves through the space, following the repetition, instead of stopping and starting at every new object. Subscribe right now because the principles coming up on this list are the ones professionals charge hundreds of dollars to tell you, and every one of them costs almost nothing to apply. Repetition does not require buying more plants. It requires buying fewer varieties and more of each. Spend the same budget on 5 of one grass instead of 5 different grasses. The effect is incomparably stronger. The cost is identical. Professional garden designers call this the rule of threes. Use odd numbers. Repeat at least 3 times across a border. The brain reads repetition as intention, and intention reads as beauty. The next one transforms the ugliest fixed structure in any garden for the cost of a packet of seeds. Number 16. Climbing plants on ugly walls. Every garden has at least one wall, fence, or structure that does nothing. It occupies space. It catches the eye. It adds nothing. A climbing plant on that surface costs less than the paint to cover it and performs more work than any renovation. Clematis, honeysuckle, climbing roses, jasmine, and Virginia creeper each bring different qualities: fragrance, flower, autumn color, year-round coverage. The wall disappears beneath them within 2 or 3 seasons. Wires or simple trellis panels provide the support structure. A few vine eyes hammered into mortar, a length of galvanized wire, and the climbing plant does the rest. The entire support system for a large wall costs less than a single ornamental shrub. Cottage gardens across England have used climbing plants to transform brick and stone walls from visual liabilities into the most beautiful vertical surfaces in the garden for centuries. The walls did not change. The plant changed everything about how they read. The ugliest fixed feature in your garden is one climbing plant, away from becoming the best. This next one builds something permanent from materials most people throw away. Number 15. Raised beds from reclaimed timber. A raised bed built from new cedar or composite materials is expensive. A raised bed built from reclaimed scaffold boards, old railway sleepers, or salvaged timber is not. The visual effect is identical. The function is identical. The lifespan of hardwood scaffold boards in ground contact exceeds 15 years. 1 afternoon of construction, 1 load of good topsoil, a permanent growing structure that makes vegetables look as intentional as any ornamental border. The reclaimed material adds something the new material cannot, a texture and patina that reads as belonging to the garden, rather than having just arrived from a manufacturer. New timber looks like new timber. Old timber looks like it was always there. Scaffold boards are available from reclamation yards, online marketplaces, and directly from scaffolding companies retiring old stock. 4 boards, 8 screws, and a corner bracket build a standard bed in an hour. The kitchen garden that looks designed from the first season. But the next idea extends your garden into hours you are currently ignoring completely. Number 14. Lighting with solar stakes. A garden that cannot be seen after dark is half a garden. Solar stake, lights placed at the base of key plants, along path edges, or at the foot of a focal point extend the garden into the evening hours and change its character completely. The same space that reads as flat in daylight reads as atmospheric at dusk. Shadows appear, textures emerge. The garden becomes somewhere to be rather than somewhere to look at from inside. Solar technology has improved dramatically. Current solar stake lights hold charge through overcast days and run for 6 to 8 hours reliably. The cost per unit has dropped to the point where a complete path or border lighting scheme is genuinely affordable. Do not light everything. Light 3 or 4 key points. The darkness between lit areas creates depth. A garden fully illuminated has no mystery. A garden partially illuminated invites you to look further. The garden you have been ignoring every evening is already there. It just needs to be seen. This next one is the detail most gardeners never notice until it is done. Then they cannot stop noticing it. Number 13. The dry stone border edge. The edge between a lawn and a border is one of the most visible lines in any garden. When it is crisp and defined, the garden reads as cared for. When it is soft and overgrown, the entire garden reads as neglected, regardless of how well maintained the planting itself is. A dry stone edge laid along the border front creates a permanent, defined boundary that requires no recutting and no maintenance. Flat stones, salvaged brick, or reclaimed cobbles set just above lawn level form a mowing edge that the mower wheel follows cleanly. The edge stays defined indefinitely. Medieval kitchen gardens used stone edging as standard infrastructure, not decoratively, functionally. The stones defined the space, retained the soil, and eliminated the labor of constant re-edging. The decorative quality was a consequence of the function. Collect flat stones from your own garden. Source them from a local reclamation yard, or use broken concrete pavers. Half a day of laying. Permanent clean edges from that point forward. The detail that makes everything around it look more intentional. This is where most gardeners discover the difference between a border that looks planted and one that looks designed. Number 12, planting in drifts. If repetition is the most important planting principle, drifts are the most beautiful application of it. A drift is a group of the same plant, laid in a loose, irregular, elongated mass through a border. Not a block, not a row. A flowing shape that moves through the planting like a river. The shapes interlock between different plant varieties, creating a woven effect that looks complex from a distance, but is simple to execute. Dutch landscape designer Piet Oudolf built an international reputation and transformed public gardens across 3 continents using drift planting, with perennials and grasses. His public gardens look expensive. The principle behind them is free. Mark the drift shapes in the soil with sand before planting. Keep them elongated and irregular, never circular. Let the edges of different drifts interlock. Stand back after planting and adjust anything that reads as too formal or too rigid. The border that looks like it was designed by someone who knew what they were doing. Because now you do. The next one is a structure so simple it takes an afternoon to install. And so effective it reorganizes how the entire garden feels every time you walk through it. Number 11. Window boxes on everything. Window boxes are not decorative accessories. They are vertical growing spaces that most gardeners ignore entirely. A window box mounted on a garden wall, fence, or shed exterior plants, upward instead of outward. It adds growing space without consuming ground space. It brings planting to eye level where it can be seen and appreciated from inside the house. A single window box at the right height changes the view from a kitchen or sitting room window completely. Wooden window boxes can be built from a single plank in an afternoon. Painted to match a fence or door color, they become part of the architecture rather than an addition to it. Plant trailing varieties at the front, upright varieties at the back, and something fragrant within reach of the window itself. Victorian terrace gardeners used window boxes as their primary gardening space when ground was unavailable. They understood that vertical space, used well, is as productive and beautiful as any border. The garden that grows up instead of out. This next one is a structure so simple it takes an afternoon to install. Very effectively, it reorganizes how the entire garden feels every single time you walk through it. Number 10. A simple arch. A garden arch does more per pound than almost any other garden structure. It creates vertical interest in a flat space. It frames a view. It gives climbing plants a purpose and a form. It implies a threshold. A sense that moving through it takes you somewhere different, even when the space on the other side is identical to the space you left. Metal arch frames are available inexpensively and installed in minutes with 2 ground spikes. A single climbing rose or clematis covers the structure within 2 seasons. The combination of arch and climber becomes one of the most photographed features of any garden that has one. Place the arch at the transition between 2 distinct areas. At the entrance to a kitchen garden, between a lawn and a border, at the top of a path that leads somewhere worth arriving at. The position defines the function. The plant does the rest. Simple, structural, transformative. The next one costs almost nothing and carries a quality that no garden center has ever successfully manufactured. Number 9. Salvage yard containers. The most characterful containers in any garden were never sold as containers. Old chimney pots, planted with trailing herbs. Galvanized water troughs, filled with perennial grasses. Worn olive jars from reclamation yards, used as focal points at path junctions. Cracked stone sinks, planted with alpines and sedums. Every one of these costs a fraction of what a purpose-designed garden container commands, and carries a quality that manufactured containers simply do not possess. Salvage yards are the most underused resource in garden design. Cast iron cisterns, stone troughs, old wooden crates sealed with linseed oil, chipped enamel bowls, and worn terracotta fragments each bring genuine material history into a space. Drill drainage holes where needed. Use a free draining compost mix. Plant something whose character matches the container. A simple ornamental grass in an old water trough. A collection of sempervivum in a cracked stone sink. The pairing of the right plant with the right salvaged container is one of the most satisfying things in garden design. The container that looks like it has always been there, because it has been somewhere for a very long time. The next one we're about to reveal changes how you experience a border you have been looking at for years. Number 8. Stepping stones through borders. A path through a border changes your relationship with the planting entirely. Without a path, you view the border from the edge. You see the front plants clearly, and the back plants as a backdrop. Stepping stones laid through the depth of the border invite you inside it. You move through the planting. You see the individual plants from within rather than from a distance. The border becomes an experience rather than a view. Flat stones, reclaimed concrete rounds, or simple paving slabs laid at walking pace through a wide border cost almost nothing and require an afternoon to lay correctly. Set them just below the surrounding soil level so the mower clears them without catching. Gertrude Jekyll, the most influential English garden designer of the 20th century, used stepping stone paths through every border she designed. Not for access, for immersion. She understood that a garden you can enter is more beautiful than a garden you can only observe. The border you plant yourself in every time you walk through it. The next one has been producing the finest garden material in the world for thousands of years, for free. From something most people throw away every autumn without a second thought. Number 7. Leaf mold from fallen leaves. This costs nothing, produces nothing you could buy for reasonable money, and transforms the quality of your soil and planting permanently. Collect fallen leaves every autumn. Pack them into a simple wire cage made from a 2-meter length of chicken wire formed into a ring. Leave for 12 months. Return to find a dark, crumbly, sweet-smelling material that is the finest mulch and soil conditioner available for any garden bed. Leaf mold improves soil structure, retains moisture through dry periods, feeds soil biology, and creates the growing conditions that make plants visibly healthier within a single season. The difference between a garden planted into leaf mold-amended soil and the same garden planted into unamended soil is visible by midsummer. Ancient forest gardens and traditional Chinese and Japanese kitchen gardens have used leaf mold as primary soil management for thousands of years, not as a supplement, as the foundation, the free product that is better than anything available for purchase, made from the thing you are going to throw away. The next one is the first thing every visitor sees, the last thing they remember. Number 6, a painted garden door or gate. The entrance to a garden is the first impression and the last memory. Most garden gates are the same weathered brown or gray as everything else. That is a missed opportunity worth correcting for the cost of a tin of paint. A gate or garden door painted in one strong, deliberate color creates a focal point visible from the street, frames the entrance to the space beyond, and signals that what is inside was thought about and cared for. The color choice carries more information than almost any other single decision in the garden. Deep blue-green, warm terracotta, dusty sage, charcoal, strong yellow. Every color carries a different character. The right one for your garden depends on what it adjoins. Paint a test patch and look at it in morning light and afternoon light before committing. English cottage gardens have used painted wooden gates in strong colors for centuries. The paint was cheap. The effect was immediate. The principle has not changed. 110, one afternoon. The garden that announces itself before you open the gate. This next one turns a wall that currently produces nothing into the most productive and beautiful surface in the garden. Number 5. Espaliered fruit on walls. Most gardens have walls or fences that produce nothing. A fruit tree trained flat against that surface changes both the appearance and the productivity of the space permanently. Espalier training, where a tree is pruned and tied to grow in a flat, two-dimensional plane against a wall, produces more fruit per square meter than a freestanding tree, creates a living architectural feature of exceptional visual interest, and takes advantage of the warmth stored in a south or west-facing wall to ripen fruit that would not succeed in open ground. French kitchen gardens developed especially training to its highest form in the walled gardens of 17th century chateaux. The trained trees were considered as much an architectural element as the walls themselves. The walls did not merely support the trees. They were transformed by them. Apple, pear, and quince take to espalier training readily. A 2-year-old trained tree, a handful of vine eyes, and some galvanized wire are everything required. The wall feeds the tree. The tree transforms the wall. But this next one costs nothing at all. It does something no planted border, no structure, and no design principle on this list can do on its own. Number 4, meadow patch. A patch of your lawn converted to meadow does more for your garden's beauty and ecology than almost any planted border. Not the entire lawn, a patch. One defined area where the grass is allowed to grow and native wildflowers are introduced by plug plant or seed. Ox-eye daisy, field scabious, knapweed, and wild carrot planted into an unknown area create a shifting, layered display that changes every week through the season and supports more pollinator species than any formal planting. The edge between the meadow patch and the mown lawn is the design element. Keep it crisp and defined, and the meadow reads as intentional. Let the edge blur, and it reads as neglect. The same planting produces entirely different impressions depending on whether the boundary is managed. Dutch, German, and Scandinavian garden designers have moved meadow planting from the margins of garden fashion to its center over the past 20 years. The gardens that receive the most attention now are not the most manicured, they are the most alive. The most beautiful thing in your lawn is the part you stopped mowing. The next one works after the sun goes down, when most gardens go completely dark and silent and stop existing entirely. Number 3, night-scented plants near seating. A garden that smells extraordinary is more beautiful than a garden that only looks extraordinary. Nicotiana, evening primrose, night phlox, and jasmine release their fragrance at dusk and through the evening hours when most gardens are at their quietest and most used. Planted within 2 meters of outdoor seating, they transform an ordinary summer evening into something that stays in the memory. Most fragrant plants are inexpensive. Many self-seed freely and return without replanting. Night-scented stock costs pennies per packet and sown directly in a border gap fills the air within 3 meters for the entire summer. Nicotiana planted from plugs in late spring blooms continuously until the first frost. Persian, Mughal, and Ottoman garden traditions placed fragrant plants at the heart of garden design, not at the margin. The smell of a garden was considered its primary quality. The visual planting supported the experience of scent rather than replaced it. The garden was remembered not for how it looked, for how it felt to sit in it on a warm evening. The next one doubles the size of your garden without touching a single thing inside it. Number 2, the borrowed landscape. Your garden does not end at the fence. Borrowed landscape is the deliberate framing of views beyond the garden boundary to make them feel like part of the designed space. A mature tree in a neighbor's garden, a distant church spire, a line of hills on the horizon. Frame them with plantings that lead the eye outward, and the garden doubles in apparent size without adding a single square meter. Japanese garden design has used borrowed landscape, known as shakai, as a primary compositional tool for over 500 years. The horizon becomes part of the garden. The boundary disappears. The space feels limitless. Lower or remove fence sections that block good views beyond. Plant to frame rather than screen. Avoid tall plantings in lines that create a visual wall at the boundary. Let the eye leave the garden and return. The design principle that costs nothing and adds more to your garden than any plant structure or investment you could make inside the boundary. This last one is the hardest idea on this list and the most powerful. The one that every single garden on this list, in every tradition, in every century, has in common. Number 1, restraint. The best thing you can do for your garden costs nothing. It requires you to stop adding. Every garden professional, every great garden designer, every garden that earns genuine admiration from every person who stands in it shares one quality. It contains fewer things than the designer wanted to include. The restraint is the design. Home gardeners consistently overplant, over-accessorize, and overcomplicate. One more variety, one more ornament, one more structure. The impulse is understandable. The result is a garden that works hard to be looked at and fails to be experienced. The great Persian and Moorish courtyard gardens that inspired European garden design for 5 centuries contained almost nothing: stone, water, one fragrant tree, one climbing rose on one wall. The emptiness was not poverty, it was mastery. Space was the material. The plants were placed within it. Walk your garden. Find the 3 things that are competing for attention without earning it. Remove them. Live with the space their absence creates. The garden that remains will be more beautiful than the one that was there before. The most powerful design tool in your garden is knowing when to stop. 20 ideas, 0 professional fees. Every difficult, awkward, underwhelming, or unresolved space in your garden has an answer on this list. Bare walls, ugly containers, flat borders, dark corners, expensive problems that have been waiting for simple solutions. The idea that a beautiful garden requires a large budget is one of the most persistent myths in gardening. The gardens that endure, the cottage gardens, the walled kitchen gardens, the temple gardens, were built from patience, observation, and a handful of principles applied consistently over time. Those principles are free. They always were. If this changes how you see your outdoor space, click the next video on your left now, because in that one, we look at garden design mistakes that cost people thousands to fix and how to avoid every single one of them before you start. Subscribe to Plantelligence and stop spending more on a garden that needs less.